All right. Anyone else have questions?
Um,
Let's tee them up.
I'll pop in. Hey Ken, I'm Ross. How are you?
Hey, good.
Um, cool. I work at a company called Open Store. We run portfolio of DTC businesses as a team. We recently acquired a business that is kind of like a high AOV product. And supply chain and inventory issues and demand planning have quickly become top of mind, which is kind of new to me. And it sounds like maybe you had that too, where it was like, your growth was kind of stunted, based on like a lack of supply and trying to catch up on that. But maybe so just curious to hear your story on that a little bit more and maybe anything you learned about, trying to line that up in terms of like, okay, I'm going to have product. Now I can ramp up marketing or some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that is the ongoing battle, isn't it? Especially with high growth. So what happened to us early is we started out life with a single manufacturer. It was someone who kind of took a risk with us, which was great because he wanted us to grow and own the business, own that side of the business moving forward. And what they did was they drop ship for us too, right off the bat. So not only were they making it, they're putting it in boxes and they're shipping it parcel because we started life as D2C, which was great, until it wasn't. So a couple of years into it, we're growing so fast that he's having trouble keeping up, especially since he wasn't really, operationally, they were a rubber manufacturer. They weren't really a logistics or 3PL, right? They could kind of just done that because it was the easy way to get us into market. And, when you're doing 50 orders a month, it's easy enough to do, right? The other thing that did for us though was we had a very weak inventory management muscle internally. So we spent a lot of time the first couple of years building the brand, understanding the sales, doing the marketing, but finance and inventory, we didn't have to really do anything about it until, the pandemic came. We were a seven-figure business by that time. We were going omni-channel, so we're selling to major marketplaces, starting to sell to dealerships and distributors. And the pandemic comes and we're already 2 months behind. So our manufacturer was struggling up until then. And the first major mistake we made was not finding more manufacturers quicker. We had seen it coming. Like I mentioned, our growth had been restricted even up until then because he was starting to struggle. And every time we went back to him, he said, no, no, I'm getting more equipment. I'm hiring more people. He kept assuring us that he could scale with us, but we kept seeing that he couldn't. So we didn't take that seriously enough until a black swan event came and kicked us in the in the gut, which almost destroyed us, to tell you the truth. Because what happened is he couldn't keep his operations pretty much crumbled starting in April 2020 and April 2021. They went out of business. So we're stuck up here in Canada trying to find more supply chain. The good thing is we did it, but now we have three suppliers. We have to find uh, a 3PL that will work with our products remotely up here in Canada because that's where we're located and everything's in the US. But yeah, we eventually did that. Just we had to source it out. That was just sweat, calling people, emailing people, telling them about our shipping volume, telling them about how heavy our product is, the DIMs on the boxes, if they could handle it, if they could do wholesale because we were omni-channel, we weren't just D2C, which is another sort of whole thing. And then so coming out of the pandemic, now we can do that, but we don't know how to forecast inventory. It's all because we've had 2 years of disruptions. We don't know what it looks like moving forward. And even now, we're just kind of getting that under our belt. So we have our one of our manufacturers is now doing distribution and parcel for us. So we've kind of moved back away from 3PLs. But we're doing our P&L sort of forecasting annually and quarterly. And we're looking at the sales volume for our SKUs so we can go back to our suppliers and say, this is how fast we're growing. This is how fast we want to grow next year. And here's the trends in each of these major SKUs. So from no clue at all to almost going out of business to now finally getting that muscle sort of strengthened internally.
So you were able, if I hear you, you were able to diversify manufacturers and find multiple, or is that? I lost if that was what you did, or if you just were able to get the manufacturer ramped up a little.
Yeah, that's what happened. So they went out of business. They actually came to us and tried to
Yeah.
raise our prices by 50% and then went out of business. So they were having pandemic kind of took them out. Um, and yeah, it took us about, I don't know, 12 to 18 months to spin up three other manufacturers who are all in the US, luckily. So it's a little easier because once they're done stuff, it takes, a week to ship, not 3 months. So that's probably the why that didn't destroy us completely.
Cool. I'm glad you got through that. Sorry that
Thanks.
sounds scary, but I'm glad you made it through.
Well, if it was easy, everyone would do it, right?
I'll keep going if you want. I could
Yeah,
talk
sure.
all day.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just keep me in line. No, because I'm just checking out that pen now. So like, from our perspective, somewhat of a niche product, not entirely niche. Tons of RV owners, obviously, but
It's pretty.
compared to comparatively. So how do you think about marketing customer? How have you worked and been successful
Yeah.
when it comes to customer acquisition in this sort of niche category? Like, what channels have done well for you, and yeah, how's that going?
The big ones, obviously Facebook is where we started, but also influencer seeding was kind of the two pillars that we started with. So influencer, I had run some influencer stuff in the early days of my agency life. So I knew that that could be a viable way to get into market without spending a lot of money, especially with an AOV like ours, which is 100, $150. It can be more than that depending on the size of your RV. Uh, it can be easy, especially back, 5 or 6 years ago when there weren't influencers with talent agents. You could just send them a product and say, "Hey, can you review this?" Now we did that for like three reasons, not just the one of like, "I hope we get sales from this." It was mostly feedback, because with a new product like this, we just wanted to make sure people actually wanted it. So we did the feedback with them, and then UGC, which we could leverage into the paid ads down the road. So whitelisting or testimonial mashups and that sort of stuff. So we considered sales like a bonus whenever we did our seeding, and we didn't go after major influencers, although there's not a lot of them in RVing, to tell you the truth. But anyone who had even a modest channel, we talked to and seeded. And now we have hundreds, maybe more on YouTube specifically that just kind of live in perpetuity and is compounding over time. So YouTube is now our second best awareness channel according to surveys, even though we don't really spend paid money there. It's all just seeding and influencer stuff. But then Facebook, obviously, the gorilla in the room when it comes to DTC acquisition. We love Facebook in the early days because we could collect feedback from it as well. So you put your ad out there and people comment on it, which was super powerful for us because we got to see, if people were confused by the value prop, if they didn't believe it, if they had questions about it. And then we started building landing pages, on-site messaging, and then just better ads from listening to people, right? And looking at what they thought about what we were putting into market.
Do you continue to rock Facebook? Is Facebook still a channel that's profitable for you?
Yeah, and we do surveys on Amazon and the site still. Like we use no commerce on Shopify, which is super useful if you're not using it. We're just using the free version, which is easy to implement. But for both Amazon and Amazon and Shopify, Facebook remains the top awareness channel for us so far.
Looks like you manage influencers through Social Snowball. Is that right? Or
Social Snowball's our affiliate, although we do, when we
okay,
have influencers that have like an ongoing commission structure, that's done through Social Snowball as well. I think Soral is like our influencer management and program.
I've used both of those as well. Cool.
Yeah, they're pretty good. But actually, word of mouth is number three, so that helps a lot.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's free, right? That's
that's
awesome.
free and compounding too. So love it.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, I do have a follow-up question about your Meta
Yeah.
budget management, decision making. Do you use a third-party attribution tool, or are you going off like how do you What's the source of truth? Not that there is one, but
Yeah, we've tried a couple. I don't use like Triple Whale or North Beam yet. I've started to look at causal inference sort of stuff. So they're called MMMs or prescient AI. So what they started to do is look at um, correlational sort of long-term and causal kind of algorithms that say you've spent this much on Facebook over the history of your time. We're mapping it against your sales, and then they start to predict how you should be spending your budget. And they also have halo effects, which is big for us because we're omnichannel. So they can say, here's your direct impact on Shopify with Facebook, but here's the halo impact on Amazon down the road, which is huge for us because Amazon's now 50% of our revenue.
yeah.
And we do Amazon PPC to some degree, but that's siloed to that channel. And PPC is always keyword and brand search based, which is can not be totally incremental a lot of the time. So we're doing the survey stuff, and I'm triangulating with various qualitative and quantitative sources. Like I said, I've done my own sort of regression model based on 2 or 3 years of Facebook spend versus Shopify sales. But I do want to get into a North Beam or a Prescient AI, or maybe a house, which is incremental lift studies down the road. Once we get those are expensive and involved tools. I want to be big enough to warrant paying for them. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the to determine some of those trends, looking back and the halo effects, you've done that all in-house with your own analysis, or?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I don't have the problem with being that smart, so I just hit the easy button, overpay for North Beam.
Oh, fair enough. And if anyone's interested in the way I did a regression for Facebook versus Shopify, I have it. I have a big ugly spreadsheet I can share to, and it's so you don't have to build it from scratch if that's of interest to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll read it out loud. It's when looking at fulfillment partnerships, how do you evaluate providers in a crowded space? What are the key drivers you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel your pain. Anyone who's dealing with a 3PL or trying to work with 3PLs or finding one, that was a nightmare for us. It took probably over a year to find one, and then we switched from them immediately because they were terrible. It took us a couple tries to get to the right partner. A lot of it has to do with what you're shipping and how you're shipping. So if you are shipping t-shirts or something that's small and you're only doing D2C, your life's probably going to get a lot easier. And there should be a lot of competent 3PLs you can use in the US and North America. Our problem was we were big, heavy, our things made of rubber. Our range of SKUs goes from 12 pounds to 54 pounds, depending on what you're buying. And we were wholesale distribution as well. So we needed someone to do all of those things competently. We I think we landed on Red Stag fulfillment over time. I don't know if anyone have mentioned them. They were excellent on the D2C side and just okay on the B2B side, which is why we've moved to sort of internal fulfillment with a supplier right now. But the other thing to really look into, and the thing that's hardest to understand, is their pricing models, because there's dozens and dozens of items that 3PLs will charge you for. And it's really hard to map that to what your use case is going to be until you get in with them. And the other thing to do once you do get in with a 3PL is audit their invoices as much as possible. You will find all sorts of junk in a lot of 3PL invoices and that you got to follow up on, because if you don't, you can be overcharged for nonsense for months or quarters or years at a time if you're not paying really close attention. And there's items like special projects for $140 an hour. What is that? There's long-term storage that you should be rationalizing against what you have in terms of inventory with that 3PL. So we had one 3PL that was charging us for long-term storage for huge piece of space. And then we looked at how much inventory we had with them, and there was no way that was true. And it was especially because it was our fastest selling SKU, which we tend to refresh every 1 to 3 months. So they were charging us for 12-month long-term storage over and over again for months at a time for something that did not exist, was not true. So the two things are, what is your use case? And can they fulfill it properly in terms of what you need from freight and parcel? And the other thing is, how good are they as a partner in terms of clarity, transparency, and communication? Because your life will be absolutely miserable if you pick a 3PL who won't get back to you, has very muddy invoices, that sort of stuff. So it's tough to get all that stuff before you land with a 3PL, but once you get in, that's the stuff to keep in mind.
I want to continue to manufacture domestically, but COGS are getting ridiculous compared to international. What has been a big reason you've stayed domestic, and how have you been able to afford this?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're kind of lucky in that our product is made out of recycled rubber tires. So it's literally just ground up tires that are filtered and then combined with heat and pressure and some epoxy to make our product. So that's, there's competent people in the US that can do that relatively cheaply. But the big thing for us is cash conversion cycle. We have looked overseas, and having that sort of long 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months between placing a PO and then getting the product, and the amount of complications that adds to our accounting, inventory, cash conversion, and even quality assurance. Because the last thing we want to do is order a C-can of these things, open it up, and see that it doesn't fit our high standards for quality, right? And I'm sure everyone has issues like that, but especially for us, because we were always on the edge of selling out for so long, it really helps to have domestic partners that can turn around a PO in 2 weeks and not 3 months. And that also means that, we're ordering stuff. We have net 30 with our manufacturers in the US. We get it in-house, and we sell a lot of it sometimes before we even have to pay for it. Now we're trying to get ahead of that, because that's not absolutely ideal, because when a big PO from a manufacturer comes in, you're kind of, or a distributor, you're kind of messed up. But at this point, we only have to be 3 months or less in terms of standing inventory, because sometimes our manufacturer, if we get something in and we don't have it, they'll just turn around right away. And that is a huge, huge benefit for us. And I have no doubt that we could lower the price per part at some point if we really wanted to do that and go overseas. But we love having the flexibility and the better cash conversion cycle that this offers. Plus, what we did is we used it as a brand halo in marketing. So now our demographic cares about made in the USA. So we put that on our site and in our packaging and stuff.
Yeah, my name's Lincoln. I'm currently running a DTC brand, fragrances, perfumes in Asia, particularly in Singapore. We are 7 figures, still relatively small. We run marketing in-house. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on how you're structuring your marketing team, and whether you're considering or are using agencies to scale up your marketing.
Yeah, and we were lucky in that we got to do a lot of internal marketing, probably like you are, up until a certain point, because I had a marketing background, and my brother, who is now the head of marketing, also did. He came from SEO and design, and then I came from PPC and social. So we were lucky in that we had all that sort of competency built into the founders group. But we are definitely now getting to the point where it's too much work and it's too complex to do internally. And we're probably going to hit 7 million this year. So if that gives you an idea. Now we're somewhat more complicated and complex than other. If you're just straight D2C and you're doing 7 million, you may not have to do what we're doing, because we have so many channels we have to kind of feed right now, and it takes up a lot of capacity. But the thing I'm doing now is doing, the next 3-6 months, I'm doing a performance marketing audit. I'm recommending a handful of tools, and we're looking at a full retention agency, a full paid media agency, and we're literally just working with a full CRO agency now. So we've started to really invest because we've kind of hit our edge in terms of either our competency or our capacity to do the work. So if I have to sit down and do hours and hours of research and then test something out and make sure it doesn't work, I mean, we don't have that much time to do that anymore. So once you start getting to a point where it's like either I have to invest 3 months of education or I don't have the time to do this every week. Those are the two questions we ask ourselves. And then it's like, okay, what is the best vendor we can find at our size and budget to get us to the next level?
And how do you know that outsourcing to an agency can do better than what you're doing in-house?
Yeah, that's the eternal question, isn't it? Because going through the sales process with agencies is easy, and then seeing if they can actually fulfill their promises when you hire them is something entirely. I mean, the good news for us is we started in late 2015. We've been omni-channel since we got back from the pandemic. So we have years of our own performance to benchmark against. And for me, it's like if I'm bringing you in as an expert consultant or vendor, you should be able to beat what we were doing internally by some, significant measure. So I know what my KPIs are. I know what our performance has been through these channels. And I know when I audit them, where our weak points are. So I go through the sales process. I get them to do an audit on our stuff because I can sort of judge competency to some degree there. And then I try to hold them, once we start the engagement, there's very clear KPIs and performance expectations. And then you just hold them to that. And I make sure not to sign long-term deals with any new vendor out of the gate. I never do this, the 12-month thing. I refuse to do that. We've tried it before. It never, ever works. I will lock in, though, if someone proves to be worthwhile and a great partner after, 6 months or 12 months, then I can talk. But yeah, it's kind of the first 3 months once you sign someone on, you're benchmarking them against what you could do and what you were doing previously and see if they're actually generating any kind of lift.
I see. What's your current internal marketing team structure, and why do you not want to consider, maybe hiring like performance marketers to grow that function?
Well, that's what I'm going to be. Well, the problem for performance marketers is they're relatively expensive. If you want to get a really good one here, especially in Canada, it's going to be pricey, and we do have that on the roadmap because we definitely want that person to be internal, like literally in the office, so they're kind of steeped in the brand and the culture as much as possible. But right now, sort of the cost benefit analysis for us is we can get this highly competent vendor or agency at X amount versus it's going to cost Y amount with someone we hire. And the issue with hires is they usually cost about 30% more than their base salary, just because you need benefits, you need to buy them computers, all the vacation pay, all that other stuff. So we're kind of just looking at what does it cost us to get a highly vetted, highly competent vendor versus having to go out and hire and train and have someone on staff. So we think that that's going to be a reality probably in the next, once we break 8 figures a year, 10, 15 million, we'll probably start building out a performance marketing team itself. But right now, what we have is kind of a lot of generalists doing whatever needs to be done because we have so many sales channels and so much stuff to do. We design packaging, we do POP for merchandising and in retail. We do Amazon content and PDPs. We do the websites. So there's a lot of projects being done by people who can do them in our marketing team. And then we're going to evolve to the performance retention sort of model where that team is just concentrating on that internally.
Got you. How big's your team right now?
Just for marketing?
Yeah, maybe across like the different functions, the whole team.
Yeah, we're probably at 17 now, including a couple people in the US. One of our engineer and manufacturing head is down there because that's one, where he lives, and two, where our manufacturers are. Yeah, I think that's everyone. And then the marketing team is 4.
Okay. Thanks for the answers. Just maybe one last question. What's in your marketing like tech stack right now? What kind of tools are you
Oh, that's a good
looking?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if I can remember all of it. You got Sorrel for influencer management. We just moved from Unbounce to Replo for landing pages because we're on Shopify Plus. What else are we using? There's so much in our tech stack, unfortunately. Marketing, Facebook, I don't use anything but in platform for that. I think, yeah, for marketing specific, that might be it. What else do we have? Let me think about it, because
What do you use for email, Ken?
email, that's right, Klaviyo. And then we're on Recart for SMS, but we're moving that to Klaviyo too for consolidation purposes. Although I am looking at PostScript for SMS too. They've kind of impressed me, and we might move to them over time. So thanks for the thanks for reminding me what else is in there.
Only because we're going through the same gyrations. I would say back to your point about in-house versus an agency or kind of a hired gun, for PPC and that type of thing.
Yeah.
The other, it's more expensive, yes, but if they're not good, it's really hard to make a pivot and get rid of them.
That's right.
Or if they're really good, they might leave. Or you can even argue if they're really, really good, why would they come work in-house anyway?
Yeah.
So we've enjoyed, but there are also bigger companies that are really successful that say, well, as you did, we want to own that, and we'll have some redundancy because we can afford it.
Yeah, exactly. The way I put it recently, because we were discussing this internally, was we're big enough now to have the needs for some of these positions, but we're not big enough to pay the kind of dollars you need to get those A players for those in-demand positions, right? So we're going to go out and try to get A players who are vendors, and then evolve or grow enough that we can start hiring those sorts of people internally down the road.
Yeah, I'll just read it out. It's from Deepak. I hope I'm saying your name right. Do you have any tips or advice on tackling Facebook ads / PPC today? I have a growing cosmetic brand and struggle at times with Facebook ads, although I know a cosmetic company, they should be a gold mine. Any tips, words of advice for Facebook marketing in your years of experience? Broad question, but open to like however you want to answer it.
Yeah, that is the $1 million question in DTC these days. So I will take you through what our sort of evolution was, and hopefully it'll help. But what we were doing previously on Facebook was kind of the old playbook of interest stacks, lookalike audiences, custom audiences, going after our niche, which is RVers, and then doing the top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel ad sets. That was the way it worked for us for years. It worked fantastic until it didn't. So what happened when we came back out of the pandemic and the playbook had changed post iOS 14 was, all right, none of this breaking up the funnel stuff works really anymore. It stopped working for us completely, and we were saturating our audiences badly. So all the sort of the lookalike custom interest stuff that we could do through Facebook, we had reached. It was done. Like after 1 year, our frequency was getting from like 5 to 7 for everyone that it was feeding our ads to. So it's like, nope, that doesn't work. We went broad and we started consolidating our ad sets. And last year, I moved to a single CBO, just one campaign. And then what we started considering within the CBO, the ad sets, was thinking about funnel position, thinking about personas, and how Facebook was going to use our diverse creative to serve the people. So we could see sometimes we would designate something in our head as, this is top of funnel awareness, and we could see that Facebook had moved it into sort of a middle funnel. And you can look at the frequency, the CPMs. There's little clues within your account how Facebook deems your ad creative and who it's serving it to, right? And right now, our big challenge is, one thing is we're omni-channel, so people can do research on our website, click an ad, bounce, and go buy it somewhere else. So that's a major, that we can't attribute necessarily that sale to Facebook. So our CPAs have risen over time, not because it's necessarily unprofitable, but because it's just not capturing all the sales that it's making. So that's kind of an internal struggle for us. But the big thing is creative diversity, creative analysis, and creative volume, I think, moving forward. As you grow, you really need to understand the different personas with your target demo, what content creative is appealing to them, and how to unlock other pools of audience to find new scalable audiences you can acquire. You can just think of it like fishing on the ocean. There's different pools of fish that respond to different kinds of lures. And the thing you're doing internally or with your vendors is cycling through those lures using, deep dive into your reviews and customer surveys. You should always be collecting that sort of stuff and then see what's resonating, see what kind of things people are looking for from your product, build that out into different kinds of creative, get it into market, and just see what's working and iterate and double down.
Yeah, Lincoln, before that, just for Deepak, we are having a session with Charlie, the disruptor, who's talking about Facebook ads. I think it's the 26th. So you can join. I'll send you the link.
Yeah, so Ken, are you big on landing page testing, or you like just send your traffic to product pages, collection pages, whatsoever?
We aren't big on it now, but that's going to become sort of the next phase of our performance marketing. So back in the early days, we only had a couple of SKUs. It only fit on a handful of RVs. So didn't make sense to build landing pages. It was all kind of in the UX of our site. The other thing we have is a compatibility friction, meaning in order to buy our product, you have to match the pack to your RV. It's kind of like buying tires. So you can decide what kind of tires you want, but then you got to enter some information to know you need size X, Y, Z for your car. So we have that kind of, a lot of landing pages work great if you can get them to purchase kind of on it, and we can't really do that at the top of the funnel. We need people to be like, oh, this is what this product does, I'm interested, and then we want to move them to the middle of the funnel, which is a compatibility UX. That's been a bit of a friction point for us, but as I mentioned, we're moving to Replo from Unbounce because we have done some landing pages stuff specifically around magazines. So RVing still has a lot of traditional advertising in it. So whenever we've done magazines, there's been a QR code, push them to a digital presence and lead capture. But now, as we try to expand the top of a funnel, we're finding a lot of high engagement but low conversion audiences in Facebook. So we're getting great CTRs, lots of engagement on the ad, but it's tire kickers and it's people who are just becoming aware of the product. So now we're going to see, can we build that next post-click sort of destination to move people down the funnel a little quicker, a little bit more efficiently.
Got you. Just gonna like switch to something a bit completely irrelevant to that question. I think you mentioned about seeding influencers as a big part of your marketing strategy. How do you go about working with the influencers? You just offer them the product? Do you give them like affiliate discounts, commissions, and things like that?
Yeah, it's a little bit personalized to the outreach depending on the nature of the creators. A lot of smaller channels and micro influencers are happy to get free product and provide a review. And sometimes it ends there. Some of the bigger outfits, when we're talking getting into tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in their audience, usually it's a bit of a negotiation straight up. upfront. Sometimes it is around commissions, offers for their audience, and sometimes it's more, it's going to cost X for us to do this, plus licensing fees if you want to take this content and do something else with it. So it's definitely gotten a little bit more complicated as we've grown and as the creator economy has evolved as well. But as much as possible, we really like to start with that one initial, here's the product, do you like it? Review it, share it with your audience, and it does that resonate. And then we can see, do we want this to be an ongoing sort of relationship? Because we now have a half dozen, maybe a dozen influencers basically on retainer every month. So they're going out and regularly making Snap ad content, mentioning the brand, that kind of thing. Actually, there's a lot of good questions. There's one, how did you find your message product market fit? How did you test it and evaluate it? I mean, that's a pretty good business if you're starting out. So I can go after that. This was interesting because we were completely bootstrapped. We had no money for marketing whatsoever. So what we did is we went directly to the consumer as much as possible, meaning RVing, there's still a lot of message boards because RVing has a lot of Gen Xers and baby boomers in it. So I don't know how many of you participate in message boards these days. It used to be very big, and it's still big in RVing. So we literally just signed up to one of them as a vendor because they charged a couple $100 a month. We're allowed to advertise explicitly to people, but we did get to talk to just say, hey, we've got this thing, it's a permanent jack pad, which is what we call our category. Here's what it does. What do you think? And then when people started buying the product, they would go into the message boards and talk about it, and then we could respond. There'd be questions, there'd be complaints, criticisms, troubleshooting. So that was super useful. The other thing we did is there's a lot of RV rallies and conventions, which is in real life opportunities to get a booth, look your customer in the eye, and pitch them. And when you're doing that in real life, your assumption for what works can come crashing into the reality of what their actual perception is and what their actual questions about what you're doing is. So over time, I've been to probably half a dozen or a dozen conventions, stood behind a table and had to pitch the product, answer questions in real life, in the flesh. And that helps a great deal for it. Because what I did after probably the second or third one is I came home and I wrote down the typical pitch of how that interaction and dialogue went. And a lot of time now when I'm onboarding a vendor, a marketing vendor, I will send them like, here is what a typical in real life pitch looks like for this product. And they'll go, oh, this is super useful, because it'll start with an unaware person approaching you going, what the hell is this? All the way to, I want to buy this. How do I get it right now? Everything in between. And that was fantastic. And I think earlier I mentioned Facebook was so key for us in the early days because we attended to everything anyone ever said on our ads. We looked it up, we responded to them. And then obviously if you have a reviews program, our reviews feed directly to my email and direct into our Slack message. And we read every one of them that comes in. And I save the best ones we have. I take a screenshot. I have a folder on my desktop. And then once a year, I output all of our reviews, and I do keyword searches on them just to see what people are saying, what were the conversion events. What I look for mostly is people saying, I didn't believe in this product, or why did I wait so long for this product? Stuff that says, I went from a doubter to someone who loves it. And that can be super powerful sort of storytelling in your ads.
Yeah, makes sense.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, I
Do
think
we want one more? Go ahead.
I do think that's something that I am dealing with right now with my product and my service. It's not an e-com product, but being able to talk with customers, I don't know, it just feels so overwhelming sometimes, but there's so much, like it impacts so much. And sometimes
Yeah.
you just feel like you know what you're doing, and and you think that you know your customers, and then you write an ad or you write a landing page and it doesn't convert at all. And
Right.
and yeah, that it's been happening to me for years now. And I think it was a bit of me being too arrogant to just sit down with my customers and being like, what is it that you want? What are
Yeah.
your pain points right now? And yeah, I really felt that one. I really felt that one.
Yeah, and the other thing we do is sometimes we'll book follow-up calls for people who are clearly advocates, VIPs. We'll contact them and say, hey, would you be up for a 5, 10, 15-minute call? We just want to know what you think of your product and the brand, that sort of thing. And I remember the guy said, I thought your product was stupid. Like when I first saw your ads, dumb, like who needs that?
Yeah.
And then they went out and they were RVing on some sort of rocky ground. And the things that we protect are called jacks, they're metal feet. They put their jack down and they have a very heavy RV and it bent on one of the big rock that they missed. And he went, oh, I completely get this. So he came back, replaced the foot, came to our website, bought it immediately. And then during the call, he said, I will never have another RV without these things. So it's funny. The funnel sometimes isn't just awareness, consideration, interest. Sometimes awareness, bounce, don't care, don't like it, until they have an experience in real life and they go, oh, I totally get it. So sometimes you can accelerate with that with other doubts. You have those stories in mind and you can build messaging around them.
Yeah. And quick follow-up question, like, can you hear me now?
Now it's fine, but for about 30 seconds there, I completely lost you.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes, because I just really quick, I've seen that the startups as they grow, they just stop talking to customers in that kind of level, right? They scale and then like they just delegate everything to customer support, and there's so much insight on talking to customers that can help the startup scale, specifically software companies. And like my question is, like, how do you go for, like, what kind of questions do you ask? Like how do you structure these calls with customers, with advocates, and with people who don't know you?
Yeah, I mean, one of my key unlocks, and it's showed, is my wife also works for the company and she's the head of customer service. So we have completely internal customer service. I haven't like parsed that out. That's not outsourced, it's internal. And so I can discuss at the end of the day what her experiences were, what friction points people are coming up with, what anxieties they have, what questions. I can sit down and listen to her on calls. And, obviously if you can't do that, there's other options. You can have your CS agents record calls and literally listen to them, and do that over a period of time and try to get a mix of excited advocates who are buying, what questions they're asking about the product to get them to purchase, or people who are not so excited, having problems, troubleshooting, angry about stuff. Record calls, listen to them. And if you have a head of customer service, if you have customer service agents, it pays to sit down with them and talk to them. Like they'll tell you, people hate X, or people really love Y, or people would like it if we did N, right? There's a lot of that sort of feedback, qualitative feedback you're leaving on the table if you're not interacting with that layer of your business.
Do you have like a set of questions you ask when you like get on a call?
It depends on who we're talking to, but advocates, it usually starts with a handful of stuff. Like it is, why did you buy SnapAds? How did you hear about it? It's the very simple sort of stuff that's really good to know, super useful. So you can, get a little bit more attribution and understand, why they like your product, why they bought it, what they like about the brand. And then it sort of should evolve into a dialogue. And like, we didn't set out to ask that story of the influencer or advocate who hated us first. We didn't even ask that. They volunteered that. So sometimes it's really about having, 3 or 4 questions that gets the dialogue rolling, that stuff you want answers to, but definitely have an open mind to let them volunteer things, because sometimes that's kind of the gold in the gold mine, because you can't always, no matter what your experience is, you can't always, guess or framework something out. Sometimes it's just the serendipitous discoveries that are the best ones.
Yeah, totally get that. All right. No, yeah, that gives me a lot more clarity. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we got a lot of content and a lot of people got their questions answered. I'll just turn on my camera. And yeah, if anyone wants to ask a question, you feel free to DM Kent. I hope that's okay with you, Kent.
Sure.
And yeah, thank you everyone for joining. We'll record this call, we'll edit it out, and then we'll just chop it up and send it to the community.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you, Kent.
Guys.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, everyone.
You guys have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you, Kent. Bye.